Hi guys, Russell here from homebrewrepublic.co.nz. How you doing? Whenever we brew using kits, we generally need to add additional ingredients to our brews to provide fuel for fermentation. Dextrose versus liquid brewing sugar versus enhancer versus liquid malt extract. What's the difference between each? What are the benefits of each? And what are they going to do to the final product of my brew? We're going to make some brews and check out the answer to those questions. Hi guys, Russell here from homebrewrepublic.co.nz. Welcome to today's video. Dextrose versus enhancer versus liquid malt extract versus liquid brewing sugar. What's the difference between each? What are the benefits of each? And how are they going to improve or affect the final product of my finished brew? I want to start with a quick note and a little bit of background. The quick note is today's video is primarily intended for people who are making homebrew beer using extract malt kits or extract brewing kits. The background starts with this kit right here, the Mangrove Jacks Czech Pilsener. I'm going to put a link up on the screen to a recent brew review that we did where we made this kit. And we made it using our new format in the brew review, which meant we made 2 brews. For the first brew, what we did was we took a kit and then we made the brew the simplest way possible. We used dextrose, we used the kit, the factory yeast, we added water, and away we went. For the second brew, what we did is we took a recipe approach. So we used some additional ingredients that were normally premium ingredients. We used a liquid malt extract, we used some hops to dry hop, we used a premium yeast, and we made that brew using a recipe approach. What we then did was we brought those 2 brews back together for a taste test and had a look at the differences. And it was that brew review that really became the start of the questions that we're asking today. Dextrose, liquid brewing sugar, enhancer, liquid malt extract. What's the difference between them? What are the benefits of each? And how will they affect the quality or the flavour or the other characteristics of my finished product? What I'm not trying to do is say that one is better than the other. What I'm trying to acknowledge is they're all different, and if you understand the brew that you're making and you understand the fermentation fuel that you're using, you can choose the best fermentation fuel as an additional ingredient to your kit to get the best possible outcome for the brew you're making. So here's what I'm thinking. We're going to do a brew experiment, we're going to make 4 brews, and we're going to test the answers to those questions. Now, you heard me say that this started with a previous brew review for the Mangrove Jacks Czech Pilsener. So I already have 2 of those brews made. We've already made a Mangrove Jacks Czech Pilsener with dextrose, and we've already made one with liquid malt extract. I've got some of those bottles set aside. So what we're going to do today is make 2 more brews using the Mangrove Jacks Czech Pilsener. One of those brews will be liquid brewing sugar, one of those brews will be with enhancer. What we're then going to do is let them bottle mature for about 8 to 10 weeks, and we're going to come back and we're going to do a comparison between all 4 of those brews. So we're going to be able to compare the difference between the liquid malt extract brew, the dextrose brew, the liquid brewing sugar brew, and the enhancer brew. All that said, I'm going to say too much talking, not enough brewing. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome to the garage. What we have here is our 2 brews. They have been cooling, so right now I'm autumn. These would have been, I think they were showing up as being well over 30 degrees, more like 38 to 40. when we brought them down. So they've cooled down, they're now about both 24 to 26 degrees. Fraction warm, but we're going into the evening and I'm autumn. It's quite a cool night, so I think these will keep cooling down quite a bit. At a guess, I think they will ferment through probably around 24, maybe down a bit, but that's not bad. When I did the actual brew review for the Czech Pilsener, the basics brew, which I did in ambient, the same as these two, went through actually closer to 26, and it came out alright. I was expecting potentially some off flavours, but I didn't get any, which was great. So these two brews, what we're about to do, as you can see, yeast is on top. We're going to chuck that yeast in and let them do their thing. I'm not going to touch these. I'm just going to leave them alone. Even though fermentation may well finish sooner, I'll check their final gravity on day 10, and I'll look to have them in here for a total of 14 days before I start to bottle, assuming that fermentation has finished, which will be defined by gravity being constant for at least 2 days. All that said though, let's not muck around. We'll get this yeast in and go from there. Alright guys, basics brew, liquid sugar in this brew. Here we go, yeast in. Alright, pitched, let's get this lid closed. This brew enhancer, yeast in. Alright, and we're done. Close this lid up. Alright guys, that's it. They're set. I'm pretty much going to leave them alone. In terms of process, not really much to talk about. I've already talked about how long I'll leave them for fermentation. I'm not going to add finings. I'm not going to cold crash. Not going to do anything. This is about as basics as it's going to completely get. All that said guys, at this point I'm going to well and truly see you on the other side when we come back for the taste test. Remember, at that point we'll talk in a little bit more detail about specifically what each fermentation ingredient is. Liquid brewing sugar, what is it, what's in it? Enhancer, what is it, what's in it? We'll go through that, and we'll obviously go through the differences we get in the brews. Cheers guys, catch you soon. Check it out guys, we're fermenting. Brew on the left, liquid brewing sugar. Brew on the right, enhancer. Fermentation temperature a little bit lower than what I thought. It's around the 20 to 22 degrees Celsius, but that's a really nice temperature for these kits. So looking for a good result. See you soon guys. Hey guys and girls, welcome back. Before we get back into the video, I want to do a quick shout out. This week we launched our new Facebook group. It's called the Homebrew Republic Kit Brewing Community. You can find it when you search on Facebook. If you love what we do, if you like our content, if you like engaging, come along and jump into the group. If you're a new brewer, we want this to be a place where you can ask questions, glean tips and tricks, share your brews. If you know what you're doing or you're an old school brewer, we want this to be a place where you can exchange recipe ideas, share your brews, but most of all we want it to be a place where we've just got a bunch of good people who really like kit brewing, whether that's beer, cider or even wine, and want to join in for some good banter. So hunt that group down, jump on in and we'll have a chat. Back to today's video though, what are we doing? Essentially we've made 4 brews and we've got a question. So the question is dextrose versus liquid brewing sugar versus enhancer versus liquid malt extract. What's the difference between each one of those as a fermentation fuel and what will it do to our brews? So as you know, we had 2 brews which we've made with the Mangrove Jacks Czech Pilsener using dextrose and using a liquid malt extract. We've made 2 more brews using a liquid brewing sugar and using an enhancer, and now we can do a taste test and check out what we got. What do you say we get into it? I'm going to kind of break this in half a little bit, and the first 2 brews I'm going to talk about is the dextrose and the liquid brewing sugar. This bottle here was from the original brew review that we did on the Mangrove Jacks Czech Pilsener, and it was made with Dextrose. This bottle here is now 5.5 months old. So quick little segue, there's another question we've talked about before, which is how long will homebrew last in a bottle? I'll chuck a link up on the screen now, but in essence it'll hit its peak around about the 3-month mark and it will stay good up to 12 months. So 5.5 months, putting that to the test. Okay, really good so far. Obviously no overcarbonation, still smells great. Alright, I'm not going to pour a full glass because I've got 4 bottles to taste test today. But check that out, still looks really good, eh? It's actually really clear. It's really nice. Okay, I've got to be careful not to slip into brew review mode because not a brew review. That's really good. That's way better than when I did the brew review. Alright, so first up, Dextrose. There are good things about Dextrose. Number one, it is the most cost-effective way to get a brew on. A bag of Dextrose will cost you about $5. So basically, Dextrose plus a brewing kit is under $30 to get your brew fermenting. You're not going to find a more cost-effective way, to make a brew. It's also fast fermenting, and it's also 100% fermentable. Now, what that means is there's no other additives or compounds in there that are going to affect the flavour or the body or other characteristics of your brew. Now the reason you might want that is really your flavour and aroma is coming through from the base kit, so you don't necessarily want to mess with that. You might be doing quite a specific recipe approach, looking for those characteristics in other places. So that's it's an advantage. Well, it's an advantage and potentially a consideration. So where Dextrose is criticised, and I've talked about this in my other videos, the first one is it does nothing for the body or the texture or the mouthfeel of your beer. What that can mean is when you're brewing a kit brew, you get what can be described as a very watery texture. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing or an okay thing or otherwise is really subject to your personal opinion. I don't mind it, especially when we're talking about bevies in a hot summer. This to me just makes it that much more crisp, light and refreshing. So I'm really okay with that. But at the same time, I've shared brews with people who have said it's missing its body or it's missing its mouthfeel. So a lot of it's going to come down to personal preference. Now, the other characteristic that Dextrose is known for is leaving a sweet tinge or a sweet aftertaste on the brew. So I'm kind of going to separate this a little bit. Number one, it does bring a sweetness to the brew and into the flavour, but it leaves this real sweet tinge kind of on the end of the flavour. I think if I was to speak, I guess, crudely about it, that sweet tinge to me comes off as low quality beer. And if kind of one of your goals, I'll come back a step. So is it a bad thing? Again, it comes a lot down to personal preference. I don't think it tastes bad at all, right? It's perfectly fine to me. I've had conversations about it with friends, and they've said, well, I don't really think it's any less or more sweet than XYZ comparisons. So it's perfectly drinkable, and it doesn't take away from the quality of the beer in terms of terms of being a negative attribute, I just think it stops it being as good as it could be, is probably the better way to put it. So all that held in balance, absolutely nothing wrong with Dextrose. Plenty of good reasons you'd use it, and a couple of considerations. One thing I've noticed though, and back to the point of this being 5.5 months, that sweet tinge has really sort of fallen back. Like this now is much better than when I did the brew review. The other thing I would say, and I think I probably commented on this in the brew review, is it's going to depend a lot on the base kit that you're using. The Czech Pilsner, very much earthy, herbal tones and a pepperiness. So that combined with a sweetness, it didn't really work, and so I think in that case it kind of detracted from the brew a little bit. If you had a brew with more of a, say, a fruity profile, that sweet aftertaste would probably be a lot more complementary with the brew. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind, is it's not about saying any given fermentation fuel is good or bad. It's what's the best fermentation fuel for the brew that you're making and for the outcome that you're trying to achieve. So that's kind of the Dextrose piece. Let's talk about liquid brewing sugar. Right, I'm impressed. Now, this was actually the first time I've ever done a brew with liquid brewing sugar. I've since done my second, which is now bottle maturing, but I haven't tried that brew yet. I have been drinking this and really, really enjoying it. So, alright, again, just a smaller glass, because I've got 4 taste tests to do. But look at that. It's awesome, eh? It comes out incredibly. Alright, I was super impressed with the liquid brewing sugar. Liquid brewing sugar, I don't think this price is going to hold, but currently the brewing sugar we use is $9.95. I think we're going to see that go up. So what I would say is expect liquid brewing sugar to be somewhere between 2 and 3 times more expensive than Dextrose. This brew here is now, should have checked before I came on, shoulda, woulda, coulda, probably 8 weeks. It's going to be at least 8 weeks old. So we're heading into that point where it's matured to the degree, approximately the degree where it's going to be now at its optimal. Now, what I noticed when I first tried this at 4 weeks, what I would have said is that the level of sweetness in the brew overall was approximately the same, but the taste was a bit cleaner. As it's matured and the profile in general has cleaned up and settled down and that sweetness has fallen away, this has become a lot better. It is really, really clean. So probably the first thing to talk about is actually what's the difference between Dextrose and liquid brewing sugar. Dextrose is regarded as a simple sugar. It's produced from cornstarch. Liquid brewing sugar is produced, it's basically a malt syrup. It's called maltose, and it's produced through a malting process from barleys. So 2 completely different products. What the guidance is on maltose, and actually what I will say is if you are using liquid brewing sugar, always check the back on the ingredients, right, to see if there's anything else in there. So maltose is pure liquid brewing sugar. It is possible, depending on any given manufacturer, that they've put something else in there. Maltodextrin, which I'll talk about later, could be something else that's in there. In the case of Brewtech, in the case of the Black Rock liquid brewing sugars, it's pure maltose. Now, yeah, so essentially it's malted barley. One thing I did notice, if you think about how thick liquid malt is coming out of a beer kit tin or a liquid malt extract tin, the liquid brewing sugar was about twice as thick as that. Like, it's really thick and gloopy. So what I would say is really critical if you're using it is make sure you get that into a tub of hot water and give it a really, really good soak to loosen it up. It was really difficult to get out of the tin. The key marketing line for it is, or benefit statement if you want to call it that, is that it doesn't give you the sweet aftertaste that is associated with dextrose. So back to those comments that I was making before, it's going to give you a far cleaner flavour profile and really let the flavour profile from the kit be what it's meant to be over dextrose. I'm super impressed. So if you're looking for just an easy way to straight away go, how can I cost effectively improve the quality of my brew by changing my ingredient mix, I would say that's one of the easy changes you can make. Go and look at liquid brewing sugar. The other area it's going to be really, really awesome is when you're combining it with other ingredients. So maybe what you want to do is create a high alcohol brew. You've used, say, liquid malt extract as your primary fermentation ingredient, and you want to get some more sugar in there to increase your alcohol. And the reason it's going to be great is it's going to give you the ability to increase the alcohol without affecting the body or the flavour profile of the beer. So there's a couple of other points I haven't mentioned. The same as dextrose, liquid brewing sugar is 100% fermentable, and it's also not going to affect the body or the mouthfeel characteristics of the brew. So it's great for straight away improving the flavour profile of a kit over dextrose, and it's also going to work exceptionally well if you're using it to top up a recipe and go for a higher alcohol brew. Using a 1 kg can of liquid brewing sugar, and actually this is the same for dextrose as well, 1 kg of dextrose. Those would, if you use the 1 kg, that should be able to let you shoot for approximately 1 to 2% more alcohol content in a brew over what you're already doing. So yeah, super impressed. And in this case, it's, this is the Czech Pilsener again. So all of these brews are the Czech Pilsener, so I had a constant. And I think really that, where I criticised dextrose in relation to the Czech Pilsener was that the Czech Pilsener flavour profile, earthy, herbal, peppery, and then sweetness didn't work. But using the liquid brewing sugar here hasn't given me that sweetness. It's really made that flavour profile that came through from the malt extract in the beer kit, let it stand on its own 2 feet and be what it will be, and it's come out super well. Next two brews, we want to talk about the liquid malt extract and brewing enhancer. Let's start on liquid malt extract. What I've got here is the brew that I made with the Czech Pilsener brew review, and if you've watched that, you'll know that I made this brew with the Mangrove Jacks Light liquid malt extract. I don't know if you heard that pop when I opened this. It did have quite a strong pop, almost sounded like it had slightly overcarbonated, which I think it has. So that's alright. Alright, again, same as a dextrose, because this was made with my original brew review. This is now 5.5 months old. It has very slightly overcarbonated. Again, similar to the dextrose brew, I would actually say that this brew is a lot better than when I did the review. In fact, if I was doing the review now, I would speak more favourably of this particular batch than what I think I did in the review. I think that, I'm trying to remember what I said in the brew review, and to be fair, I probably could have gone back and watched it before this video. What I feel like I said, so okay, liquid malt extract, why do I like it? Number one, it gives your beer a little bit more body. Number two, it gives your beer a smoother mouthfeel, a far nicer texture. Number three, it's going to introduce a little bit more malt character to your brew. I'm just going to put a little asterisk on that one and come back and talk a bit more about that in a second. So all things that I really like, and or characteristics I really like in my brews. What I did say though is that in the context of this brew, I probably wouldn't have used the light liquid malt extract again. The malt character that it introduced was probably a little bit too heavy for this brew. What I probably would have done is, and I think this brew and one of the next ones I did has sort of led me to the conclusion that if I'm ever brewing like a Pilsner, a lager, potentially even a pale ale, I'll go straight to an ultralight liquid malt extract over a light. And I think that that would be far more suited to those styles of beer. So I guess what I'm calling out is I probably didn't use the best, it wasn't the best choice of liquid malt extract for this brew. But the advantages you're going to get, as I said, mouthfeel, body, malt character. There are other things, you'll get better head retention if that's what you're after, and it will also change the colour profile of the beer very slightly depending on the liquid malt extract that you use. And I guess that's actually a call out and a good place to finish this is where we talk about liquid malt extract. I did talk about like an ultralight, but generally you would go ultralight, you would then go light. You've then got other variations, right? So you've got amber, you've generally got dark. There are a range of different liquid malt extracts you can use. So really what I would focus on is across the board you're going to get those generic improvements around head retention, body and mouthfeel. And then in terms of how it affects the flavour and the colour is going to be very dependent on the specific liquid malt extract that you choose. The other thing that I would think about is the strength of the flavour profile of the brew. So where you have a very delicate flavour profile, you have to be careful with the malts that you choose because it is possible to get a malt flavour that overpowers or masks the flavour profile of the brew if the flavour profile for the malt is a little bit too strong. So the other thing I always been thinking about there is balance. And again, I guess that goes back into the style, excuse me, yeah, and I think with this one it sort of fell into that category where the malt flavour was possibly a little bit too strong for the brew. Yeah. Hope that all made sense. Right, next brew, Enhancer. Alright. Here is our Enhancer. Now, I have a confession to make. This was the first brew in years that I've made with an Enhancer. I tried using Enhancers previously, just never enjoyed it. Never felt like I got an outcome that was much better than using, say, Dextrose, and so sort of steered clear of them. They can also be a little bit difficult to work with, and I'll touch on that in a second. When ages ago, I had a chat with one of our distributors, and I said, look, how do Enhancers go for you? Are they actually like a strong seller? Do people really get into them? And the response from the rep at the time was people either love them or they're just not into them. I think that's a fair call, and I can sort of see why. But I've got to say, on the back of this, I'm actually giving more credibility to Enhancers. So here we go. And this has come out exceptionally well. I'm really impressed with this brew. Yeah, hey, here you go. You can see the overcarbonation just foaming a bit. I'm not going to drink the rest of that, I'll be throwing it away. I'm lucky, that was the liquid malt extract brew, by the way. I'd saved 2 bottles, this was one of them, just to do this video, so yeah, those two videos will be, sorry, 2 bottles will be unfortunately heading down the drain, but that's life with homebrew. Okay, I think probably a good place to start is what is enhancer and what's actually in it. So this will depend on the enhancer that you're using, the specific brand and what's in it, but there's always going to be 2 ingredients, possibly going to be a third. So the 2 ingredients you're nearly always going to get. Number 1 is spray malt, number 2 is dextrose, and number 3 maltodextrin. So let's break each of those down. What is spray malt? Effectively, the easiest way to think of spray malt is the dry powdered version of liquid malt extract. So it is a malt in a dry powder form. Now, the same as with liquid malt extract, you can get different varieties. You can get light, ultra light, blonde, amber, dark. You can put different spray malts into an enhancer. It's unlikely that the packet will tell you explicitly what malt we'll use or how much of it is used. They're just going to have an enhancer, which is a specific blend, and they'll tell you there's spray malt in there. Similar to liquid malt extract, spray malt is going to bring through some of the benefits, some of the same benefits we'd get. So it's going to start to improve mouthfeel, it's going to give you malt character, it's going to give you a little bit more body. The next ingredient, maltodextrin. Now what I would say is if you're going to miss one of those 3 ingredients, maltodextrin is possibly the one that won't be in there, but maltodextrin is a food additive. It does nothing for flavour, and it's also non-fermentable, but what it does do is give you some body and mouthfeel. So it's there to start. If you remember, we talked about dextrose really leaving you with a watery texture. The role of maltodextrin is really to introduce body, texture and mouthfeel to your beer. And then the last ingredient that we talked about was dextrose. So what we're doing is bringing in an ingredient that's fermentable, it's fast fermenting, and it's going to give you that alcohol content, or alongside the spray malt, it's going to give you that alcohol content that you're looking for in your brew. So like I said, what the packets will tell you is the ingredients that we use, but what they probably won't do, particularly in the case of spray malt, is tell you the specific malt that was used, and across the 3 ingredients they're unlikely to tell you the specific blend. Now, similar to liquid malt extract, you can also get different types of enhancers. Now often what people will do with enhancers is they'll label them as a blend. So this is blend number 1, it's designed for lagers. This is blend number X, it's designed for pilsners, and so forth. The enhancer that we used was the standard enhancer from Mangrove Jacks. It's just the generic, non-specific go-to. And what I'd say is that for me, when I was trying this brew, the malt characters that were coming through seemed to be very similar to the light liquid malt extract. To give you an example, the other main thing that I picked up with this, when you're using dextrose, so if you think about the process of actually making a brew, generally you put your hot water into the bottom of the fermenter, then you chuck in your dextrose, or either or, you chuck in your dextrose first, or you chuck in your malt extract, but either or, you put your water into the bottom first. When you're using enhancer or straight spray malt, put that in first, not the water. Otherwise it turns into this horrible gloopy mess. If you've ever encountered it, you'll know what I mean. So if you're using enhancer or straight spray malt, that goes in first before anything else. Then add your water in, and what I would say is be prepared to have a whisk on hand, obviously that's sanitized, and to use a whisk to properly break it up and get it into your brew. Where I was impressed with enhancer is it was a really nice middle ground between liquid malt extract and dextrose or liquid brewing sugar. And when I say middle ground, really nice middle ground in terms of introducing some body and some texture, but not as much as a liquid malt extract, introducing some malt flavour, but not as much as a liquid malt extract. And particularly where we're talking about those brews, you know, I talked about like lagers and pilsners and actually liking a really light body, especially over summer. enhancer is going to give you some mouthfeel, some body, but not take you up into the area of a liquid malt extract, and still let you keep some of that light bodied character and make it a really crisp, clean and refreshing brew. So, and what's interesting, and again, Czech Pilsener here, where I talked about the liquid malt extract probably giving it, and I use light, and in that case probably giving it too much malt character and not necessarily completely working with that flavour profile, this has worked a lot better and actually turned into a really, really nice brew. So, really nice. So, if I was to wrap up the section on liquid malt extract and enhancer, the one big thing I would say is that in terms of flavour profile, the result that I got was determined by the specific products that I used, like liquid malt extract and the run-of-the-mill enhancer from Mangrove Jacks, and that you can change the flavour profile by selecting different ingredients is probably the key thing there to remember. The other thing I would call out is in this whole process, there's one thing that we didn't use, which was a straight spray malt. So when we were talking about enhancer, one of the ingredients is spray malt, powdered malt. You can buy packets of powdered malt on their own. Now we haven't used that or tested that in a fermentation fuel, but I think you can probably get an idea of the result that you would get if you were using spray malt by itself. So, all that said, what we've done here today is brewed 4 brews with 4 different fermentation fuels. The takeaway I really want to leave you with is I don't think of the examples that we used, Dextrose, liquid brewing sugar, enhancer or liquid malt extract, this wasn't about saying one is better than the other. It's about saying here's the result that you're likely to get when you use this specific fuel. And so the encouragement is to think about the brew you're making, think about the effect the fermentation fuel will have on it, and choose the fermentation fuel you want for the outcome you're trying to achieve or that's best suited to the brew. The other key thing I've really called out, especially with liquid malt extracts and the enhancers, is I used one product, but you can get huge variability in the flavour profiles and in the colour that come through from those products based on the specific style you choose. So please keep that in mind when you're thinking about this. The other big thing I would call out is I made each of these brews using only one of those ingredients at a time. But there's nothing stopping you, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, there's nothing stopping you combining ingredients, especially where you want a slightly higher alcohol brew. A good example would be picking up an enhancer and then using a liquid brewing sugar. Another good example would be grabbing liquid malt extract along with the beer kit, which would give you your standard brew, and then using a liquid brewing sugar or dextrose on top, which will give you 1 to 2% more if you use the whole 1 kg. Nothing wrong with mixing and matching. Now the other thing I would say, and this is way off piste to this video, is you can use other ingredients, right? You can start thinking about household ingredients, things like maple syrup, things like golden syrup. Now I'm not going to try and cover those in this video, but my intent would be to say that there are other places you can go to get sources of sugar for fermentation fuel of your brews. And particularly when you step into using other, I'll call them household ingredients, they're going to give you completely different attributes in terms of the flavour. I've often heard people talk about brown sugar as bringing a real caramel tone to the brew, which I think is really, really interesting. So, all that said, I've actually really enjoyed making this brew and making these brews and making this video. And if I'm being honest, this is one of the videos I've learned the most personally out of making. So, hope it added value to you. Hope this gives you something you can experiment with in your brews moving forwards. Remember earlier we talked about that Facebook group, Homebrew Republic Kit Brewing Community. Search on Facebook and come and join the conversation and get amongst it. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, we really appreciate the support. Feel free to comment below or reach out to us with any questions or chuck them into the community. We love engaging. What we got coming up next? The next two videos you see are brew review videos. One of them is the BlackRock Brew and Bag Pale Ale. So BlackRock released a great new range of kits. I've done the Pale Ale. That will probably be, if you're lucky, this month, but I'd say it's more like 2 to 4 weeks away. The next brew after that, which I'm super excited about, is another brew review where I did 2 brews, a basic brew and a recipe brew. But what I've done is I've made one of them as a low carb, it's a pale ale as well, and I've made one of them as a NEPA, a New England IPA. Really cool story around that one when we get there. The brew in my fermenter at the moment is a Mangrove Jacks Craft Series Red IPA. But the big brew I really want to get down this month is going to be a stout. Now, I've never brewed a stout before, but the reason I want to get it down this month is so that it's got time to brew and then bottle mature and time to be dropped in November. And the reason November is specific, as I'm pretty sure it's November 4th, is International Stout Day. There you go. Keep that in mind. Maybe jump online, grab yourself a stout kit so you can be drinking a stout with me in November. That seems like a great place to properly wrap up this video. I know I said it before, but if you liked it, give us a thumbs up, subscribe. All that said, I'm going to say cheers. Catch you later.
Cheers!